listeners. This is The Natural You, and I'm your host, Tim Wood. Today, I'm with the amazing Naomi Mills, who lives and works in Scotland. And I think she's got a lovely story to tell about her practice journey and her interaction with nature and how she interacts with that and how it's helped her make decisions in her life. Welcome, Naomi.
Hello, thanks for having me, Tim.
Brilliant. Thanks for coming on. Can you tell us a little bit about where you are now, and then perhaps then go back and say, well, how did you get to this place, and the decisions you took along the way, and what drove you to make those decisions?
Absolutely. I feel like I just prepared well for this podcast because I just went on a 3-mile walk in nature with my dog at like 7 o'clock this morning. I'm like, that's where I am now. I live just south of Edinburgh, so we have the beautiful Pentland Hills outside of the window of my home and my practice. But also, I love to walk there, so that's where we were walking this morning. And so I have very consciously, after the experience I'm sure I will share with you all, worked hard over the last 4 to 5 years to create a life that has a lot of nature in it. And I actually prefer that word to balance because I don't really think there is such a thing as balance, is there? And all your work is life and life is work. But I am in practice maybe a 20-hour week, and the rest of the time I like to spend walking, exercising, horse riding, wild swimming, meditating. And during those, like, that's the creative time, isn't it? The time to I plan events and retreats, think about life. And actually, my priority now is creating more joy than stress, because I used to live a life that had a lot of stress. And the cool thing is, all of those things align, don't they? So the more in touch you are, the more in that parasympathetic, grounded, connected state you are. And of course, nature is a great part of doing that. Then, the way that your life changes, and it's different. So I'm really trying to embrace all that I've learned over the last 10 years.
Yeah, and you're also a mum and a
Yes,
wife, and so
yes,
you've got that going on too. Can you tell
yes.
us what were the kind of chief stresses in your previous life, and tell us a little bit about your practice and how you got into that. So if you could just sort of say, where you started out in practice, and then how you
Yeah.
kind of segued into this.
I think, like any profession, this isn't unique to chiropractic, there is a vision of what success looks like. And when you're not careful, you take on somebody else's vision, or a vision that's presented to you through culture or friends or your community. And you think that's what doing my job well is. And so there was a lot of that when I graduated. Just the people I was around and the circles I was in created a vision for me about maybe having quite a large practice, employing people, being really busy, helping lots of people. And then that combined with, and I'll be very honest, like a childhood kind of desire to have money through safety, having building up a safety net. Those two things together kind of motivated me to really move fast as a new graduate. I worked for somebody, I think for about 18 months, and then ended up buying a very well established but relatively small practice, which I then grew over the next 8 years to have, arms, legs, and tentacles. We ended up with 10 employees and 12 rooms. And my husband described it as the monster that ate our lives, actually, at one point.
How many rooms did you say?
So it was 12 rooms, not all chiropractic. We had like a yoga studio and massage and reflexology. It was quite holistic, so that worked really nicely.
That's a
But for me
big that's a
being,
big operation.
yeah, and the principal chiropractor, the boss, the mum, the wife, yeah,
Yeah, no, so I get it why you were so stressed, and all the staff and associates and managing
yeah,
all of that. It's a big
yes.
operation.
Yes. And I wasn't unhappy. And I think we say this with clients a lot, don't we? When I talk to my clients about stress, I don't mean sad things, but it's things that take your energy. And so we had quite a rich life in many ways, and we had a lot of things, but I was becoming quite disconnected and into survival. And I didn't really know it at the time either. I was just head down, getting on and having a good time doing it because I was achieving things and feeling good about that. So it wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't doom and gloom by any means.
So what made the shift for you there? What were the sort of crucible moments that kind of started turning you
Yeah.
to something
Well, there
different?
was 2 things. I mean, there was probably many that I didn't see, and then you have your aha moment when you're like, "Ah." And I think one of the things I did to myself was I decided to go on a big push at work and get lots of new clients in. At the same time, my associate went to get married and he was on his honeymoon. And I ended up having the biggest day in practice that I've ever had. And it was a day that, I'd been told, this is quite a good thing to do. It's an achievement. And I became aware that in order to do that, I was in quite a high level of stress and in a bit of fight flight. And I was looking back, it's very easy to see I was quite reactive and short tempered with my fabulous team sometimes. And, I was really on and I was digging from my own energy to take care of everybody. And it was then I realized, like, I don't think this is sustainable. If this is the goal I'm going for, it doesn't feel like I thought it was going to feel. And so that was a big aha. And then the second one, because I think I had that inclination for a long time, but I didn't know what to do about it or have any tools to do about it. And the second big thing I did was I accepted a suggestion of a friend to go on. It wasn't even a retreat, but it was with like a life coach over a weekend. Basically, step out of your life, take some time to reflect on your life, which is not something many of us do when we're in life. And that began my real journey of, okay. And that one weekend led me, even though it was uncomfortable and difficult at the time, led me to commit to saying yes to a few more of those opportunities for self reflection, which then eventually led me on a quite powerful weekend retreat a couple of years later where everything fell into place and I had a bit of an epiphany and realized that actually the right thing for me was to sell that practice, sell that home, move countries and come back to Scotland. So that was a big weekend, that one.
And for people who maybe have an inkling that they perhaps stuck or not in the right place at the moment and are perhaps needing an epiphany, what are things that they could lean towards or embrace or try from your experience, having had your own experience and also running retreats yourself? What are things that you do and what other people might perhaps look at to help them get into that space and be open to that epiphany if it comes?
Yes, and never go in expecting an epiphany, Tim. I'm still waiting for
No,
my next
we
one.
all, we all want the magic download, don't we?
Of
So
course.
I think there are, I mean, there's no recipe, but I think if we can give people some pointers and ideas of
Sure.
where they can navigate to maybe
Yeah.
get some more clarity for themselves, and what are cues to say, hey, I need to maybe relook at this or start looking at different pathways to follow.
Sure. So the cues is a great place to start. I think so. It's all about taking time to reflect. So the part that I would say people can do on their own is just being really honest with yourself, looking at the physical stuff. So for me, the signs of that you are living in a degree of fight flight. So your sleep, how's your digestion, how's your energy, how's your mindset, and being honest with yourself about that. And also the things that you're moving towards. For me, my compass now is how satisfied and fulfilled do I feel. So I'm not looking for numbers, be them financial or performance or anything like that. It's actually how much joy and fulfillment can I suck out of each day. And if that's is, how
Those
much
are,
of that am I
I mean, those
getting?
are, we don't talk about those metrics. We always like
No.
in practice building and business things, and it's like, well, what's your number? Where do you want to be? Not how do you want to be or who do you
Yeah.
want to be?
Yeah.
Perhaps different questions, not what do you want to achieve. So I think those are such important questions for all of us in all
And I
aspects of our life.
actually changed so I love meditating and I'm a future thinker. I love setting goals and making them happen. So I used to always, what is the life I want to lead? And I would think about that. And the cool thing is, I now lead almost exactly the life that I envisioned. And when I talk about that first uncomfortable weekend we did something called free dreaming at the end, where you had to draw your ideal life. And that was my first shit moment, because I was like, the life I have drawn from the heart over this weekend is not the life I'm living, but it's actually the life I live now, which is really cool and wasn't a conscious thing, it was a subconscious thing. However, now rather than envisioning a different life, how can I improve this life? I really focus on how I want to feel in my life. Because I think so many of us, you can keep changing the outside, can't you? Your hours or your money or your house or your job or your location. But what is the saying? Wherever you go, there you are. I'm working on how I want to be.
Yeah, so it's that feeling over form, right? Is that
Yes, yes,
so that's something for us to kind of come back to, when we have these external targets. Maybe we should be
exactly.
having internal states rather than external targets.
And for me, the second part of your question of what tools can people use, I honestly believe in my own experience and my experience of now running about 50 events a year for other people over the last 3 years, is that self reflection on your own can take you so far. And you can listen to all the podcasts and you can read all the books, but there is nothing like going on an immersive experience with experienced and qualified people that you trust, that will then hold a space for you, hopefully have a group of like-minded individuals. And I think the group experience is so much deeper. And that's when you get your deep releases and your deep ahas, because as humans, we're built to be in community, aren't we? And even so, I'm a holotrophic breathwork practitioner and I encourage people to practice at home, but you don't get the crazy insights and healings and things that people have had on your own. And I know I don't go as deep on my own. There's something so magical about being held, and about being in that safe space that actually allows us to, and being around other people who are in that same state, that unlocks stuff in a completely different way. And I think you would agree, because I know that you support people in a similar way in breathwork.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, I've done solo stuff and the group stuff. It's this we can say the group energy or the energy in the room or whatever that kind of the concept is. And I think there's an element of being challenged as well and having an instructor say, "Hey, how about doing this?" or maybe let that go. And then perhaps later on, when you're reflecting, someone actually really say, well, "What do you want?" or "How is it that you want to feel?" or "Is that the way you want to show up?" And then you're on the spot. And when we ask ourselves questions, it's quite easy to give ourselves a few answers and but not really answer it. But when someone else
Absolutely.
asks you the question and you're around other people, it's like, holy shit, well, what do I actually think? Where do I
Yeah.
really want to be? And then when you say that or emote that, then there are other people to witness it. So it's been said, not just internalized and spinning around in several other wheels. And you have to come. It's the group can hold you to account, and it gives you an opportunity to express at a deeper level, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I continue to be completely humbled by some of the things that I've had the pleasure of then helping people through. And then when you see them a year later and they go, that exercise we did, that thing changed my life. And you just think, well, that's incredible.
So it's amazing. It's amazing to have that opportunity. And tell us. So you mentioned the breath work, and in your bio, you mentioned you're a fire walking master instructor. I think it was.
I am.
And can you tell us a little bit about how you did that? And I remember talking to you just after you'd done it, and you said it was an amazing experience. So can you tell us a little bit about the training and what's we hear about fireworks and people do them for charity, and there's kind of this obviously a big challenge to walk over hot coals. I haven't personally done it. I know lots of people that have. So can you tell me and anyone else who's might be curious about walking over hot coals, what does it do other than heat up your feet a little bit?
Well, actually, they did some studies where they measured the temperature on the base of people's feet, and they were a few degrees cooler after they walked on fire, which is mind
There we
blowing.
go.
So, Tim, to me, fire walking is chiropractic on steroids, like it's inaction, okay? Because you know that to heal, you have to be in a connected parasympathetic healing state. That's what we're helping people achieve. That's how we're trying to shift their nervous systems. And that is the state you have to be in to walk on fire. So if you walk in fear and you believe you're going to get burned, or if you or there's a trick behind it or something like that, or if you walk in ego because you feel like you should, or because your friend has, or your wife went twice so you need to go again, you will burn because you are in that sympathetic state. You are in a place where your body is not as resilient and adaptive. Now, we still don't fully understand the science behind firewalking, which is also why I love it, but it's all about being in a state, raising your energy to be higher than the fire. And you can do that either through deep connection. So I do spiritual firewalks, which doesn't have any religious connotation. It's about walking for emotional reasons, what the life you're walking towards, the things you're leaving behind. We write words on the wood and we burn them, so we set so much intention in the fire. And it's really cool when you have just like Susan from down the road sees you're doing it, so she comes. I don't know, just remember this woman saying to me once, she's like, that fire looks different now, we've put intention into it. And I'm like, yeah, it does. Isn't that awesome? So we do it through that, or we do it through joy, getting people jazzed up a bit, music, dancing, raising the energy. So I say it's like chiropractic in action because you're showing people how to change their state from the inside out, from their mindset, rather than us shifting their state from their body. And there is nothing more confronting. You talk about some people that will challenge you. There's nothing more confronting than 1100-degree coals burning back up at you, and then you're going to take a step on it. There is nobody that's ever stepped on a firewalk that didn't make the decision to go. So it's very, very powerful, life-changing stuff. And I've done many hundreds of them now. And the firewalker training is a week long, and it has a lot of self-empowerment activities. So we walk on broken glass, and we do trust falls and sweat lodges and arrow breaks and rebar bends, all these things, because when you combine a physical challenge with an intention, for me, it goes way deeper. Like, it changes you on a cell level. The commitment is much more.
So it's more than just a metaphor.
Exactly. It's much more than a metaphor. Or if you're my husband, who's an engineer, who then came to do, I did my training twice because I actually went back and did it with him. He's like, well, I know it's physically possible, we wouldn't be doing it. So for him, it was about, but you know, when you assign a meaning to life, yes, you can just do something. You can just break an arrow. You can just step on a hot coal, or you can make it mean something. And for me, life is all about the meaning that you give it, right?
Absolutely. And I loved what you said a little bit earlier. You said we don't fully understand the science about it, but that's what I love about it. And I think I love that aspect of you, and I like to embrace that. I'm quite a head guy, so like your husband want to kind of go, oh well, that guy can do it, I'm sure I can do it. There must be some physical element to it. But when we don't understand the science, it's kind of there's more of a mystery to it, and our consciousness is still a mystery. The metaphysical world is that mystery, and I don't know if any science will ever unpick it, because every time we go to one level, we think, oh, now we'll understand it. We go there, holy shit, there are about 100 things now that now opened us to us which we don't understand either, and so it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And just accepting that at the start is like, well, the science will show us, but it's never going to give us the full picture, will it?
No, and that is my joy of life. I am all up for a mystery. I don't want it all explaining to me necessarily, but it was a wonderful lesson for him. So on the final night of your firewalker training, we do what we call the 108, because 108 is a very auspicious number in a lot of nature and in different spiritual texts. So you walk 108 fires in a row without stopping. And on like
I thought we
fire
were
80
108
something,
degrees Celsius or something. No.
no, they're all super hot. But there's you can imagine it, three kind of like three pathways with a little gap in the middle in a circle, so you can just keep going till you've done 108 fires. And on fire 80 something, my husband went, he thought they were cooling down because they keep replenishing them. He's like, it's getting cooler, or this is getting boring. And he dropped out of state and he picked up a burn and wasn't able to complete it. But we always say the fire is the teacher. So that was the best lesson he could have got as someone who doesn't quote unquote believe in this,
Mm.
because he didn't know he was in a state, because he'd never experienced what it was to come out of it and receive that burn. So it was such a powerful thing for him. And he is a strange guy. I always tell him he's a unicorn. He is so naturally in that relaxed, parasympathetic, connected state without thinking about it. So he actually falls into this work beautifully. He just doesn't know how unusual that is.
Wow.
Or maybe I just hang out with a lot of highly strung people like me.
You can recognize it. Yeah, some people just seem super chill, don't they?
Yeah.
You wonder maybe there must be a downside to that at some point. Can he ramp up quickly when he needs to? When there needs to be an urgency or
No.
see. So, so in a
So it's
crisis,
wonderful, but
so
it
in a
does come with
crisis, you want
limitations.
you. In a crisis, you want Naomi, and then
Yes.
and
But
then.
he'd be very calm in a crisis, and he is calm in a crisis, but no, he doesn't ramp up actually. Doesn't worry about things.
Wow, sounds like amazing to have that in your life all the time.
Yes, and he's tremendous because we dream up beautiful. We have an acre of land overlooking the Pentlands, and we built a retreat cabin together where we hold the events. But if I say build me this, we want to do this. He has this beautiful idea where people are going to be able to walk down into the earth, go into like a natural pool, and come back out. He'll build that stuff. He loves coming up with these ideas together, and then. Just at the end of last year, I became a master firewalking instructor, which means I'm now qualified to teach other people to become firewalking instructors. And I did that because learning that level of self mastery, it's actually nothing really to do with firewalking, even though you can do more challenging fires. It was about choosing your state, changing your emotional state in all aspects of life. We did an incredible experience where we spent a whole day really amplifying the feeling of love and connection, and then went gambling in a casino to see what that difference that made to how much money you won. Now that is
Yeah.
a fun afternoon, can I tell you?
Wow. No,
Really mind
I would
blowing.
never put those two things together
No, I
because,
know.
like, when I walk into a casino, I get this. There's a super oppressive feeling. I
Yes,
was in Las Vegas, and I literally walked in, and I was like, it hit me. I mean, the sense I have was super super negative energy, this oppressiveness that was just in this noise and lights. It was just crazy. So to go and be in a state of love and then go into a casino would have been so.
yes.
I mean, quite jarring, I would think.
Well, the energy of a casino on a Wednesday afternoon in Northampton isn't high, and they clearly thought that we were all a little bit unusual, but it was absolutely amazing to sit and play those games. And the idea was you would press the button because it's all very modern now on how you do it. So it wasn't you could do it with anything, but we were doing it with the ones where you press the button and you would wait. So I just had my eyes closed to really amplify that genuine feeling of love and then press the button. And we did that. We had to spend £10 and then just come back and see how much money we had. And I had a little bit more money than when I'd left. So we'd spent the £10 and come back with more. And then for round two, we did it in partners. So someone was holding you and sending you love while you did it. And then as round three, we did it, the whole group of us. So can you imagine a group of like 9 people all touching each other in the casino and all the regulars are just looking at us? But it was tremendous. And funnily enough, one of the guys on the course was a casino manager from America, and he told us, right enough, the people that tend to win, the people without an attachment, they're there for their love, they're there for fun, they're there for celebration. They're not there because they need to or have to win money. They're not gambling to fill a void, as many of us will have our vices. And he said, right enough, the people that win are the ones that are in high energy, that are playing in love.
Yeah,
It
and
was so cool.
this is supposedly a random number generator. It's
Yes.
like
Now, their theory, Tim, if you wanted to hear it, because again, we don't know, is
I'd
that
love to hear
your
it.
electromagnetic field in love obviously vibrates at a different level, and it could influence the electromagnetic field around the random number generator.
Yeah, and
Don't know, don't care. It was really fun.
don't know, don't care. I've read some studies on virtual random number generators and people who meditated and put on, like I want to see whatever the coin flip or whatever it was, and they performed better. The outside of chance. Better than
Yeah.
chance compared to just
And
the
that's
numbers on the
life,
phone.
isn't it? You're
And
going
it's
to
just
perform with
amazing.
all of this stuff. You're going to do better, but it doesn't guarantee you a win.
So
you
we
know?
kind of at the point now we're saying, well, we know our state influences those immediately around us, and now we're kind of saying, well, maybe it can push out into our communities and wider, and it affects my pets. And I've just read something on how it affects our plants. So
Yes.
like living beings, okay, yeah, it was animals. Now it's going, okay, well, hang on, and let's see how this all works. And now we're saying, actually, we can influence machines, and so like electromagnetic feels or whatever it is or intentions. Fascinating. I mean, I've heard the story. One of my clients told me about this chap who worked in a he had a he worked as a mechanic for this fleet of trucks. And there were like I guess hundreds of trucks that would come in and out, and his job was to make sure they all got serviced. And he got to a point where he would come in, trucks had been parked, he would come in and he would go walk down the aisle of trucks and go that one, and he intuited without tearing the engine, without starting it up, which trucks needed work done. And they would say, well, how do you? He just had this intuitive sense. I was blown away because I'd always kind of seen intuition as some kind of tissue, right?
Mm.
That we kind of picking up some kind of energy from or whatever. I don't know. I don't understand. Don't know. Don't care. But this was fascinating to me that someone working in a mechanical, he was a mechanical guy, but he started
Yeah,
to build up this rapport, let's call it, with machines.
I
Uh,
think that's awesome.
so it's totally weird and wonderful. But when we start acknowledging that and just being so, okay, well, we don't understand it, but there's something there. Well, so the firewalking sounds like it's enabled you to access this way of being, and reminds you. So let's say Naomi's having a rough day. You woke up, you're feeling a bit moody, and you go for a walk, and you're feeling a bit better, but you're still a bit ratty. What do you do? What do you do then?
That's a good question. Well, I just go to one of my tools. And to be fair, I do use that intuition. It could be putting some music on. Journaling quite often works very well for me. It was something I tried for years and gave up on a lot. But I have written a journal every day for almost 3 years. And actually, sometimes just emptying the not very good thoughts or feelings is a big one. If you want to talk about intuition and just weird things, quite often I will let Spotify randomly assign a podcast episode for me to listen to, and it'll be exactly what I need to hear. My husband and I sometimes he calls it letting the universe DJ. So he's secretly come on this mission with me over the last 12 years from his very analytical engineering mind to saying things like that. But it's just allowing your intuition to say, well, what do I need? Or I might do my breathing for 5 minutes. But more than anything, it's recognizing, isn't it? Recognizing your own state. And it's not that there's always a magic switch that's going to put it where you want it, but the power of being of the awareness often shifts it anyway. And luckily for me, if I still go into work, let's say, feeling not great at time when I'm there to serve my community lifts me, and I finish my shift feeling so happy. And someone will have told me a really cool story like that one, and you just think, oh, people are great. Why am I, what am I not so happy about today?
Yeah, I can echo that. I think anyone who puts hands on people will not be able to finish a shift without being elevated to some degree. And maybe it's because they're giving us energy, or maybe we just have to be in a state of we're giving, and that has to
Yes.
be when you're
Yeah.
giving. There's a receiving at the same time.
But you've touched on an important part for me that I think is often missed in chiropractic, is when you say, I don't think anybody can be hands on and not feel lifted. I actually think a lot of body workers are hands on, not just in chiropractic, and aren't lifted because they are in a survival state themselves, and you actually can't serve as well. So I think even though there is, like you said before, the numbers or an ideal, very few people, I believe, let's just talk about chiropractic, can deliver at that level and be in their heart space, be connected and be in ease. And some people can, and that's why they're masters. But a lot of us are chasing that and perhaps delivering it in a way that doesn't allow us to be in ease. And that's where the disconnect comes. And so I know my practice I created here, which is much more about everything is natural, it's slower, it's more connected. That has totally shifted my state while I work. And then the experiences that my clients get, and therefore who they recommend and how long they stay, and all of that other stuff changes because of how I am. And in my old practice, I could have come away from a shift and just been like a drained battery. I still had a good time, still loved my people, but I was mining my own energy to perform at that level.
So
So I
you
think that's
so you
interesting.
you weren't wasn't coherent, right? You weren't in a yeah. wasn't vibing with where you really needed to be.
No, because I think it's hard for people when you're trying to achieve something. What's the first thing you don't? I'll not do the journaling today. I'll not go for that walk. I won't meditate. There's no time.
No
And then
time.
and then you realize the less I work and the more I kind of go into that state, the more I achieve. It's a lovely little quirk of the universe, isn't it? If you trust.
If we trust, yeah, and you seem to have such a high level of trust, and do you feel that's grown with each of the steps you've taken, and trusting that process, and trying the new thing, and trusting that you'll learn something from it, even if it's uncomfortable?
Absolutely. Do become a bit, it's particularly so the firewalking training week was probably my first massive introduction to that of doing the terrifying thing may bring such great reward, and then you start getting a bit kind of sadistic about it and you're looking to be made uncomfortable because you know what it's gonna bring you. So it absolutely has kind of done that for me. And I don't think trusting that everything's going to be okay, or trusting in the process, or even in the science, because there's lots of science around this now, is that easy. That's where my journal comes in, and I've got evidence. So it's actually quite good. Do you know, if I'm having a really bad day, I'll put like a big star at the top, and I'll go back a couple of weeks later and read all my fears or my negative thoughts so that I can remind myself that's how I felt. And look, I was okay.
That's
So for me, actually, the trust has come with quite a bit of reflection and evidence and time, and it gets easier with
I
time.
haven't heard journaling. People always say go back and look at your pathway, but actually to earmark
Oh, I do, yeah.
the really bad stuff and go, oh, that I got through that.
Yes,
And so that's because we can even it's so easy just to gloss over that. And you're having maybe a few days and you're feeling down, um, and then kind of they say I've heard people who commit suicide and things like that often don't think they're going to come out, but if they reflect backwards, they can see that they've actually made similar returns from this
yes,
desperate state, and that's something to be able to hold on to, and to then go back and go, oh yeah, I was like that, I did feel like that.
yeah. It's powerful to recognize thought patterns, just also to look back and then go, wow, I really have evolved since then. And then they're like, oh, where will I be in another year or 3 years or 5 years? And it's just a lovely, it's a really underutilized tool, I think, because it becomes quite Instagrammy, or just like, well, just write your intentions or do this or do that. And I've learned with a lot of this work, we just gloss a lot. We do it quite surface level, and it is the going deep, and that doesn't make it complicated, but it does involve us really slowing down and going through the layers. One of my absolute favorite activities to do with somebody, with a group, is affirmation work. But we're not just talking about like I'm enough, and it's actually going layer by layer. What filter, if you had it, would help change how you see the world. What's the reason behind it, all the way deep down to your core beliefs? And that can be a really powerful thing for people. And then, because you want them to have something to then pull up in those hard moments. And I've got some great ones. And it's actually what firewalking first did for me, because my first firewalking experience was with Tony Robbins on a UPW event. So we firewalked with 13,000 people, which is a mind blowing thing. But what I came to realize was he puts you in a state almost of hypnosis because he wants everyone to be safe and to have a good experience. So while it's a very positive experience, and it was for us, it's not really led by you. Somebody stood there
Not that
making it
empowering.
happen. Yes. But what it did for me was I was able to go, I walked on fire. I could probably lift that weight. I could make that difficult phone call. I walked on fire. And that was a huge game changer for many, many years, because you have that reference point.
Interesting. What I've found interesting, tried more in the last year or so, is recognizing the cycle. So, often when we download, I'll get through this and it'll be another thing, is when I'm really high, go, this isn't going to last. You know,
Yeah.
it's like obviously you want it to, oh, it'll be like this for the rest of the summer, and then suddenly you're like, oh, I'm getting irritable or something's happened. Go for a run or whatever it is. But it's kind of just kind of recognizing where you're at and kind of going, oh, I feel freaking amazing today. I can just do anything. And they go, okay, well, just run with it because, it might be gone tomorrow, it might be a little bit less, or
Yeah.
we kind of get to this point, this is where I can live forever, it's like eternal summer.
Yes.
And then suddenly the autumn comes in and you go, oh, okay, hang on, what's going on? So kind of being mindful, like, oh, let's make the most of the summer. Let's make the most of this energy I have and really drink it in and go, oh, it's
Yeah.
amazing to feel this way. I feel like I'm doing some exercise. Like, oh, I feel like I'm 18 again. And I go, okay, that's great, but it's probably not going to carry on like that, is it?
No, and that's what I actually love about what you're saying is being really okay with the dips. And that's just such a beautiful thing. And cycles in nature, I do a lot of my work in the practice and in my events around. I've fallen in love with the Celtic calendar because we have 7 seasons, all based in nature, not just 4, we have 7.
7.
And it's just tremendous to give yourself permission to have those seasons like in your week and in your month, but in your life and throughout the year. Really, like, so this last winter, massively slowing down. It's a time of nourishment. It's collecting energy. So the trees know how many fresh leaves they need to grow just based on the weight of the snow on their branches in winter. So we all need to just, stop, slow down. And then there is this lovely emerging in spring, isn't it? But it's beautiful to go with that and celebrate cycles because in the West, we're just expected to like go and go more, often with less. And that is not
Yeah.
sustainable.
And hit the high and stay on the high and perpetual growth and this our whole.
Which exists nowhere naturally, does it?
No,
Ever.
no, and we feel like our economic system can do that, and therefore we can do that, and it's just everyone knows it's unsustainable, but we just keep hammering on, right? Because we don't know how to change it. But perhaps if we start acknowledging even just those cycles, the 4 or the 7 seasons, and recognize those in ourselves on a day-to-day basis or week-to-week basis, and then start building that out into our communities and not expecting it from others. If we're expecting our staff or our loved ones or our children to be always performing perpetual growth, what happens when your kid kind of stalls or falls behind their peers or suddenly is much better? Do we celebrate, oh, well, they can run faster than the other kids, so therefore, yeah, that's gonna flatten and drop down?
Yeah.
And so we're always, I'm quite a competitive person, so I'm always kind of striving, as I want to get better, but recognizing that that's not always going to be the case. I think maybe we as societies and cultures can learn to move back into those cycles and we become more cognizant of them.
Yeah. And it's exactly what I'm trying to do in my own life and work now. And it's funny because I was having this conversation with my brother last year about, the practices established. I'm doing these events, I'm trying to balance it with my own life and nervous system. And it's just always been this perpetual growth. And I was kind of saying that to him. And I was like, so I don't know where I'm going to go next. I'll just grow it a bit. And he said, well, you don't have to grow. And I said, but you want to evolve, not revolve, David. And he went, yeah, but evolving doesn't mean getting bigger. And I went, are you sure? Like, I had to really think about that
Yeah,
because somewhere I'd associated evolving and improving with growth.
yeah.
That is so not the case, is it?
No,
I
no.
think many of us do. So now it's about the deepening and the slowing and the saying no to stuff and the holding of boundaries. And it's a totally different journey. So I'm grateful for his wisdom on that one.
There we go. And not easy to say about your brother. I mean, but as you were saying there, perpetual growth. The only thing that we see that has perpetual unrestrained growth is cancer, right? It's like, or something that's totally out of whack, a system that out of whack just will
Yeah.
go wildfire. And so maybe there's a lot to be learned from that. Is that perpetual growth model is on a broad level a dysfunction, and a diseased state.
Yeah. And that was my story. That was me for 10 years working and mining and just going and going and going and going. And yeah, and then eventually realized the only person that can really rescue you is you. And I think we were possibly going to bring it up anyway, but I ended up, when we moved, which was right at the beginning of COVID, actually, I ended up writing my book, which is called You Are the Answer. And I'm writing the follow up So that's all about mind, body, spirit connection. It was really me processing everything I'd learned in chiropractic and in my life and lots of stories. And I'm now writing the toolkit for it, which is all the actionable tools that I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years, a lot of the retreat stuff that you can do at home to put action to the idea. And I'm developing that into workshops as well. So eventually we'll have 3 or 4 day workshops that combine the science with the activity so that people can move through but also get all the understanding. Because for me, the real only empowerment is for each and every one of us to realize we are the answer. We have the answer for ourselves, and it doesn't come from another thing or another person. And that to me is the true empowerment, is going, no, no, you can have this knowledge. Here it all is in a little package. Go use it, and empowering the people to use it for themselves.
Sounds amazing. I mean, so I'm going to put the link to the book in the show notes for those who sound like that's a good read, and you'll let us know when the toolkit's out, and I'm sure we'll
Yeah.
see it on. If you want to follow Naomi on the socials, we'll put that in the show notes as well, and as well as her retreats. So let's kind of finish off a little bit. Naomi, can you tell us a little bit about one or two of your retreats? So, what could people expect? The time frame, where you do it? I know you said you run 50 years, so you've got to be running it. You've got to be regular access
That's my
points.
part-time job.
That's your part-time job. So, if you could just give us a little snippet of perhaps a different. Is it one type of retreat you run, or are there different types? Who would they? Who would be better off? I know that you do all women retreats, but can you tell us a little bit about the type of events that you run?
Absolutely. So people who are in any way local to Edinburgh, it's super easy because I do several 3 hour events. So they'd be in an evening or Saturday afternoon because I want to make it very affordable and accessible for people. And then I have my larger events that usually about twice a year I will do a weekend, and they are men and women quite often. Sometimes, and last one was 5 men and 3 women. I was delighted. It was amazing. So we do whole weekends, Friday to Sunday. Every 6 months we do a ceremonial sweat lodge. So that's like a whole day where you come, and it's an incredible experience of a bit like a spiritual sauna where you are physically and mentally cleansed. And we'll be in that lodge for, around 3 hours and have a meal. So that's like a whole day. And I also do breathwork events that are a day, sometimes breathwork into fire walks. You will probably, I don't tend to do the same thing on repeat. I go
Okay.
with the flow of what inspires me, what I'm feeling called to do.
Okay, so people will just kind of come
Yeah,
along,
you
and
just,
then you'll go, okay, this is where we're going, and
yeah, I
so they
get
need to
it.
be
I
open
almost
to
think it's
any
like
one
a
of those
song.
things.
Yeah, it's a song or a poem or something. It comes to me and I deliver it. So it'll be around all sorts of different themes. We did a festival of joy last August. So, it just depends what's coming.
And we can find these on your website.
Yeah, and they're on a whole event page, and you just go on the mailing list or flag it to check every so often. And they are getting so busy now. I'm going to set up a whole separate website for the events.
Woohoo!
But it's just getting to that time now where that feels like
Yeah,
the right thing to do.
fantastic. Me, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I always love connecting and hearing your story and about trusting yourself and empowering yourself to make these big life changing decisions and going against a little bit of the grain of like, oh, we got to grow and we've got to get bigger and see more people and do all this thing, and trusting yourself and your intuition and allowing that to kind of emerge. And it's just been so beautiful to talk to you and to just kind of observe your journey. So thank you for sharing with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great fun.
Cool. And we'll see you soon.
See you soon.